my primary approach for investing in real estate is not the conventional or the traditional way. So my primary approach is creative. One of the strategies that I have at the top of my creative list is the strategy of subject to real estate investing, meaning that when we purchase a property, our primary acquisition strategy is to purchase that property not by getting a new loan and purchasing the property, but by taking over the existing loan that the seller already has on that property. Now, for us, 100% of the time, the seller that we're speaking to about taking over their existing payment is 100% of the time for us, that seller is in pre-foreclosure, meaning that the seller has an auction date set probably 3 to 4 weeks out here in Georgia. Every first Tuesday of every month at the county courthouses, they hold auctions. And those auctions are where people who are in pre-foreclosure, houses are going to be sold on the courthouse steps. And so what our company does, at least the division of our company that provides solutions to homeowners who are in foreclosure, that division, which is called RP Capital Home Solutions, reaches out to the homeowner who is in pre-foreclosure with a pending auction. We try to give them some type of solution, solve their problem to help them. We explain to them what we do, how we do it, okay? And we offer them money to walk away with, which is cash at closing. We offer other complimentary services like helping them relocate, scheduling movers, if they need a crew with a truck to move junk, if they are working with an apartment complex or some landlord to move to get verification, we'll speak to them. We do whatever we have to do. We've put people in extended stays. We do whatever is necessary to help people because, number one, what we do is a part of our ministry, which it's always been that way for my wife and I for over 21 years now. Everything that we do in business and more specifically in real estate, it's all about making money, but it's all about helping people. And so it's very satisfying and fulfilling when you know you're doing some type of business that has a direct impact on people's lives, on their livelihood, on their protection and safety, because it's regarding their home, okay? So it's very satisfying and fulfilling to know that you're helping people, but you're also making money in the process. So again, creative real estate investing is non-conventional. It is the non-traditional way to invest. And I believe where we are right now in the market, in the economy, especially because foreclosures are rising, there are millions of homeowners who are in default. And every 30 days here in Georgia, we look at the auctions every first Tuesday of every month, and we see the number of homes that are going into foreclosure that are either going back to the bank at auction or they're being sold to third parties, both of which will file an eviction to kick that previous homeowner out because they no longer own the home. And that's something we don't want to see. I believe we need more individuals, which I'm training a group of individuals to tap into this market, to provide these strategic specialized solutions to homeowners. And you're able to do this in a creative way that doesn't require a lot of cash. It doesn't require no credit, and it doesn't require no credibility. So just with that understanding alone, you should get excited about becoming a creative real estate investor. So if you are an investor or if you're thinking about getting into real estate investing, I would love to know, number one, where you're located, because every state is different. I would love to know where you're located, and I would love to know What exactly are you doing? What is your acquisition strategy? Are you approaching pre-foreclosures? Are you approaching tired landlords, vacant properties? Are you approaching real estate agents to purchase properties on the market? What is your acquisition strategy, and what type of real estate properties? I would love to know this, and my team and I, we make ourselves available. But anyway, this week, from Monday through Friday, all we talked about on the show, Monday through Friday, was the 10 steps to a creative real estate deal. Now, the reason why I like to break these steps down is because when you think about creative real estate investing, especially if you're talking about subject to investing, you got so many moving parts. It's so many things that have to happen in order for a deal to work. It's easy to get lost in the sauce, right? It's easy to just get so overwhelmed and intimidated and thrown off that you just say, you know what, this too much for me. But if you take the time and you break these principles and practices down and you process them, they will at some point start making sense, okay? And that's one of the reasons why I host bi-weekly real estate meetups here at my office. We just kicked off this initiative because of the response that I've received from people who are in our Millionaire Mentorship Program. I didn't know until I put it out there in our community how many people were interested in real estate investing, and more specifically, creative real estate investing. So again, you can always go back and watch this past week's show that we hosted all week, every day at 12 noon, and you can pick up a lot of the details when we got into the weeds of these 10 steps. But just to simplify it, if you're open to learn creative real estate investing, and if you are open to implement subject to real estate investing, then these 10 steps will help you a lot, especially if you are clear on what your target property and what your target seller is. It makes it better. So again, when I say 10 steps to a creative real estate deal, I am specifically talking about the type of creative real estate deals that I do, which are 100% of the time subject to deals that are involving properties that are in foreclosure. That's the top of my list. I'm not saying I won't do any other deals. All I'm saying is that's my primary acquisition strategy, and I encourage you to have a primary acquisition strategy. Don't be all over the place, okay? So when I say 10 steps to a creative real estate deal, for me, I'm talking about subject to deal. So if my company, RP Capital Home Solutions, was preparing to acquire a property, these are the 10 steps that we would implement to get that process started. So step number 1 is generate the lead. You have to generate the lead. So again, generating the lead is going to require what? It's going to require you knowing what type of real estate you want to buy. Because if you don't know what type of real estate you want to buy, then you're not going to know what type of lead you want to generate. So you want to know what type of real estate you want to buy. You also want to develop a seller profile, because if there's a certain type of property you want to buy, I'll use myself as an example. The type of property that I want to buy is a pre-foreclosure. It's a property that's in distress, that's in default, and that's getting ready to be foreclosed. That's the kind of property that I want to buy personally, okay? So because I know that, now I can start developing a profile for that type of seller or that type of homeowner. I can think about what their motivations are. What is their distress? What are their problems? What are the things that they dealing with that I know they might not have answers and solutions for? Well, that's a part of my lead generation, because it makes it easier for me to know how to approach that homeowner who by default, if it's a pre-foreclosure, they are a seller by default if they cannot pay that reinstatement, or if they don't have any other option before the auction. They are a seller by default, okay? So now I can generate my lead. Now, for me, if I'm approaching pre-foreclosures, there are certain places I can go to find properties that are in pre-foreclosure. And when I'm looking down, I'm looking at my workbook because I teach all of this in our workshops. I talk about these things in our meetups. I have an entire educational course on this inside of our mentorship program. So there's a lot of information and details. There's a lot of information that you got to fill in the blanks. So I'm not able to get through everything. I'm just trying to at least give you a clear overview of each of these steps. So there's a certain place I'm going to go to find these properties. And once I find those properties that meet my personal investment criteria, or as we call it, our buy box, I'm going to pull those lists. The list is going to primarily consist of addresses most of the times, okay? I'm going to take those addresses, and there are certain softwares that you can use to put those addresses in, like CRM type softwares, but there are certain real estate friendly platforms that you're able to put that address in, and you're able to pay a couple pennies, maybe 10 cents, sometimes it's free, and they call it skip tracing, where you're able to find out any numbers or email addresses that are associated to that property and to the owner or owners of that property. Now I'm able to generate the lead. Once I get that information, I'm going to do what I call a preliminary underwriting process, which most of the times it may take me about 30 seconds to do it. There are certain data points I'm going to look at. So if I take that address that I find, I put it on one of my investor-friendly platforms, I skip trace to get a number, or even before I skip trace, I'm probably going to look at certain data points because I know it's a pre-foreclosure, and because I know I want to acquire that property or buy it subject to. There are certain data points that I'm looking at. I'm looking at the loan balance. I'm looking at if it has any liens or bankruptcies attached to it. I'm looking at who's the owner, how long they've owned it. I'm looking at the monthly payment. I'm looking at the interest rate, the loan type, the loan term. Like, there are certain data points, and I teach this and I provide this inside of our underwriting worksheet. But I'm going to do that even before I generate the lead, because I'm not going to send an email or cold call or text or mail a flyer or a postcard to somebody that I know doesn't fit my criteria. I'm not going to waste my time. That's me. That's my company. Now, a lot of investors do it differently, but I don't do it that way, okay? So I'm going to do maybe a 30-second, 45-second preliminary underwriting just to make sure that all the details and the data points make sense. And then if I skip trace it, or when I skip trace it, I'll get a name, I'll get a number and an email address, and then my team will start generating the lead. So we'll send out postcards, mail, we'll email, we'll text, we'll call, we'll leave messages with the hope of having a conversation with somebody to do a deal. All right? So that's step one. Step two is we're going to make initial contact. So the number of leads that you may need in order to make contact with someone who is interested is like no different than any other numbers when you sell. Okay? Whether you're selling a product or a service, it really doesn't matter. Most of the times you need way more leads to generate in order to get way more initial contacts. That's just the way it is, okay? So, I mean, if I had to do some like math, I would say if you're generating just a couple hundred solid good leads every month, let's just say hypothetically, you're generating about 200 leads, which is low a month, but it will depend on how you're vetting those leads. If you're not vetting them strategically, or if you're not being like picky and petty, that 200 can be 2,000. But you're probably gonna get about, just a few percent in terms of ratio as a return to actually contact. So let's say out of 200, you probably not, you might talk to 20 people, that would be 10%. You might talk to 5%, that's 10 people. Out of those 10, you might get cussed out by 3, told no, not interested by 3, and now you're left with 4. And out of those 4, you might get 1 who say, I don't know, let me call you back. So that means your lead generation has to go up, of course, but also what you say to that person, what you're saying to that person, what you're emailing them, what you're texting, what you're leaving on the voicemail, what your postcards say, that plays a role. But either way, you generate the lead and then you make initial contact. Assuming that at some point, someone is interested in your proposition, in your offer. As a creative real estate investor, particularly someone who is purchasing a property subject to, especially if it is a distressed property, then there are certain facts you want to gather. This is step 3. Certain facts you want to gather. Again, for me, if I'm speaking to someone, or if my team makes an initial contact with someone who is in pre-foreclosure and who has already showed interest in being open to a creative real estate transaction like subject to, now there are certain facts we have to gather. This is a part of a sales process. You have to fact find. So there's already information we know when we generated the lead through the platforms that we use. But now we want to confirm some of that information and dig a little deeper to get more information. And again, if it's a subject to transaction, pre-foreclosure or not, some of the facts you got to gather are going to be related to if they're behind on their payments, do they have bank statements, do they have an online portal, do they have liens, what their monthly payment is, how far behind, how much money they want or need to walk away, what other type of assistance they need to transition. It varies. You have to gather the facts. What the condition of the house is. Is there anything that they know of that's wrong with the house? Are they the only ones on the title? Have they done anything that is not showing up on record? Sometimes they might lie, sometimes they won't, but you're just trying to gather facts, okay? That's step 3. Step 4 is you want to underwrite. Now remember, I told you before I started generating the lead, or once I got the address and put it in my investor-friendly platform, I did a preliminary underwriting just to know that there is potential equity or cash there. There's an opportunity. Well, once I get to step 4, I'm going to underwrite that deal again because I may have other facts that I gathered from that potential seller that I didn't have when I generated the lead and made the initial call and did my preliminary underwriting. Because now at this point, I may have a solid number of what their payment is, because I may have guessed it up there. I may have tried to guesstimate it. But here I might know, okay, our mortgage is $972 a month. Okay, so it's been like that consistently. Yep, we're behind this much. We just got a letter. The letter says this is how much we owe. Okay, what is the date of that letter? Now you can get more facts. You can get more information, and you can go and do a post-contact underwriting process just to see if it's still a deal. And it doesn't take long to do this, because remember, if you're generating a couple hundred leads or a couple thousand leads, your contacts are going to be much lower anyway, just because that's the way business is. And then the people that you get past the contact stage who actually want to do business, now you're gathering those facts, and now you're underwriting the deal again. And I want you to remember, I'm approaching these 10 steps as an investor. I'm not approaching these 10 steps as a wholesaler. So that's not my first thought, that I'm going to wholesale this deal. My first thought is I'm going to buy this property and my company is going to own it, and we're going to either fix it and flip it, or we're going to buy and hold it. So of course, my vetting process is going to be a little different. That's why my leads might be different. My contacts are going to be different. My facts are going to be different. So if you're wholesaling properties, or if you're just a deal finder who wants to be good at underwriting to put deals together, you're kind of moving towards the wholesaling anyway if you're going to do all that work. You're not going to want to do all that work that a wholesaler would do and only get a finder's fee. So you're probably a wholesaler just in how you operate. But either way, we're going to underwrite it. We want to go back through those numbers to make sure everything makes sense. And once everything checks out, step 5 is we want to visit the property. So we want to visit the property. And again, each of these steps, there are other pieces of data you need. There are other specific things that you have to consider. Like when we visit a property, there are certain things that we're going to do. We're going to bring the documents for the seller to sign. We're going to ask and request copies of any recent statement they have. If they have an online account, a portal for their mortgage, we're going to ask to reset the password so we can have access to it. We're going to do all that, if not before, during that visit. Because when we sign that contract, now we're starting the process of putting this deal together for real. And we don't want to start spending money and we don't have certain levels of commitment. We're going to go back over what we do, how we do it, what the risks are associated to doing that type of deal. We're going to have the documents, and the documents are going to disclose certain information as well about the nature of the type of deal that we are proposing to them. We're going to visit the property. We're going to take pictures. Like my team and I, we went to a property just, what's today, Saturday? We went Thursday. Guess what? One team member was doing videos. Another team member was taking pictures. I was doing something like I was doing the math. I was calling my contractor. My wife was calling an appraiser and our lender. So we have a lot of things that we do because, again, I am the investor. I'm the end buyer. A lot of times, if not every time, when I approach a deal, I'm approaching the deal as if I'm going to put my money up and I'm going to buy it. And I'm going to be on the line, on the hook, and responsible for everything. So that changes how my process looks, and it changes how critical I am of each deal. Because if you're bringing in other people's money and you ain't got no money in the deal and all you thinking about is wholesaling it, you just going to get a check and keep it moving, you might not be thinking about the things that someone like me is going to think about, because I'm going to be a little more petty. I'm going to be a little more critical. I'm going to filter it more. I'm going to need different angles. And because of the nature of this type of transaction, which is a subject to transaction and a pre-foreclosure with a date of auction in front of us, you got to make sure you got all your facts straight. But again, it's not impossible. You just need to be around people who are doing it, and you need to learn it and familiarize yourself with it, okay? So step 5 is I want to visit the property. Once we visit the property, step 6, we want to sign the documents. Now, if it's a subject to transaction, there are 2 documents, at least for me here in Georgia. My attorney has provided for me the necessary documents that I need to get signed just to get the legal ball rolling, okay? To get the things that we need started, okay? So we have an authorization to release, because we're gonna need to get information if it's a pre-foreclosure from the foreclosure trustee. If it's a HOA, we're gonna need a letter from the HOA. If we have to do a title search, so we need the document signed. We have a purchase and sales agreement that we're gonna sign. We're going to need to be clear on what the seller is expecting at closing, if anything. If there are certain things that we're going to be doing for the seller, like getting them a storage, getting movers, helping them relocate, putting up a little money to assist them, whatever that is in that process, that needs to be stipulated inside of that contract so that when we sign it, we're clear on what our expectations are. So step 6 is sign the docs, okay? Once you sign the docs, you're going to submit the docs. If you're working with a transaction coordinator, maybe that's who you submit the docs to. If you're working with a title company or an attorney that's doing it, that's who you're going to submit the docs to. If you're working with somebody on your team that does all that, whoever you're working with, you need to make sure those documents are signed and submitted. And whoever you're working with, you need to make sure that you know what their policies are, what their procedures are, what are their processes. For example, when I get documents signed, we're going to submit those documents to our attorney, okay, to a closing attorney. The closing attorney, at least for us here in Georgia, they're going to assist us in requesting a reinstatement letter or a payoff letter, whichever we're doing. They're gonna start the title search. If there's an HOA, they're gonna request that HOA letter. All right. But because I know what their process is, what their policy, what their procedure is, I know that I'm gonna need to reach back out to them in a couple days or maybe a week or so to remind them that once you get the reinstatement letter, the title search results, the HOA letter, once you get all that back, I need to know what it says. I'm not going to wait until it's too late. I need to know because during my due diligence period, maybe something comes back and I'm like, no, I'm not doing the deal. So you want to be clear on who you're working with and how they operate. Step 8 is your due diligence. So there's a mandatory due diligence. You want to definitely make sure somebody's getting a title search. You want to make sure you're getting a reinstatement letter if it's a pre-foreclosure. If it's a HOA, you need to know that. Don't just go off somebody saying, no, we ain't got no HOA. I've seen that before. And then we do some research and homework and find out there is a HOA and we would not be able to close without that HOA letter. That's very, very important. And you got to pay whatever the fees are associated to that HOA. During the due diligence, you also have physical due diligence. So that means you got to get an inspector. You may need your contractor to go out there in most cases to give you some type of quote. Maybe you'll wait until you get the inspection before that, but these are physical components of your due diligence. You have a financial component to your due diligence. That's going to be very important because your finances, you want to make sure in your financial due diligence that you are clear on the utilities, gas, water, trash, lights, all those things, because sometimes depending on where you are, I know here in Metro Atlanta, that can become an issue with the water, with certain counties in Atlanta. So a part of our financial due diligence is finding out, are they behind on the bills? Are the utilities off? If we need them on for our inspector and contractor, how much does it cost to get them turned back on? We need to know that stuff, and we're going to do that during the due diligence, okay? The legal due diligence, there are certain things. You definitely got to get that title search, reinstatement letter, HOA letter, but also if you're bringing in a private money lender, you're going to have your promissory note, your deed of trust drafted so your attorney can vet that and put that in your pre-closing packet. That's all a part of your due diligence, okay? During that due diligence period, remember, you're putting what that due diligence period inside of that contract. So whether it's 10 days or 21 days or whatever, you want to make sure you do all your due diligence, because if for some reason you have to back out of that deal, you're going to back out of it during that due diligence before you get to closing, okay? Before everything starts settling in and you get your final closing documents. And then, of course, step 9 is you want to attend the closing. You want to attend the closing. And you want to, by the time you get to closing, most likely you've already gone through, or your TC or agent has already gone through the HUD settlement statement to make sure all the information is right, all the numbers is right. By then, you've wired whatever money needs to be wired for closing to the closing attorney. All that should be done by the time you attend the closing. You want to make sure you're on time. You want to make sure the seller is on time. And again, if it's a distressed seller who's in pre-foreclosure and you're purchasing their property creatively with strategies like subject to, you don't know what situation they're in. So you have to stay on top of them, or you have to have somebody that works with them to stay on top of them. And you want to get to that closing. Sign the documentation. I also forgot to mention during the due diligence, you want to also have your insurance policy set up so that it goes into effect by the time you close, all right? That's going to be very important. And if it's a subject to, that's another nuance. Your insurance has to be done with someone who understands how those transactions work. And of course, you have after the closing. So after the closing, you're changing the locks. You are making sure you've gotten any fobs, the garage keys, any mailbox keys, anything that you didn't think about during due diligence, you're thinking about at closing. And then after the closing, you're preparing to get the property ready. You're preparing to get your contractor to making the repairs. You're not going to make the repairs prior to closing. You're going to change the lot just for your safety and security of your property, your asset now. And you're going to implement your exit strategy, whether your exit strategy is, fix and flipping, or whether your exit strategy is buying and holding. That's when you're going to implement your exit strategy so that you can either rent it out, lease it out, or sell it, whatever it is that you plan on doing. So I hope just in this short period of time that I gave you somewhat of a summary of these 10 steps that we pieced up and talked about all week. But I wanted to at least have one show on this Saturday where we talk about all 10 so that you could see how they work from entry to exit. This is the entry of a creative deal. This is the exit of a creative deal. And of course, there are a whole lot of things that happen that we ain't talk about, but sometimes you only get that information. You only get that information when you only get that information when you're in the deal. But if you underwrite your properties correctly, if you have the right people working with you, professionals, and if you're a premier professional and you know your stuff, you're not going to, I'm not saying you're not going to have problems, but you're not going to find yourself in a bad situation where it costs you and your company and your family a whole lot of money. So if you have any questions, or if you just need to take a few moments to speak with me and my team, whether it's in person, via Zoom, because you want to figure out what is the best strategy for you as a real estate investor, or maybe you're thinking about the creative side. You might be in a different area than I am. I'm here in Metro Atlanta, so it's different in each state, but at least I could give you some direction. I could share anything that I know that can help you along the way. Of course, we're always welcoming new mentees and members inside of our mentorship community. Our Millionaire Mentorship Program is not just a real estate investing mentorship. It's a business mentorship. So we teach you through courses, workshops, weekly calls, and through hands-on support. We teach you everything from starting and structuring your holding company or any other LLC, including your investment LLC. We teach you and show you how to manage the day-to-day operations of that type of multi-entity enterprise, okay? Because that you essentially become an asset manager at that point. We show you how to integrate the right systems and processes for your business. So you want to have a general operating system so that you can stay on top of your marketing, your sales, your financials, your administrative activities, your executive activities. All that needs to work cohesively together if you're going to run a multi-entity enterprise. We teach you all the creative financial and tax strategies that we know and use and that our tax strategists and CPAs work with us on. And of course, we teach you all the ins and outs of real estate investing. So we have a lot of training on the fundamentals of real estate investing, but we also have a lot of training on the creative side of real estate investing. And the good thing about all of what I'm saying is we're doing it. We're doing it all in real life and in real time. So there's some things I don't teach in my programs or courses because I don't do. Like, I'm not the credit repair person, so I don't have any information on that. I may have resources or, recommendations, or I may just share with you little things that I know and picked up on, but I'm not the guy for that, so I don't know a whole lot about it. I don't teach about stocks and bonds and crypto because I don't know anything about it. That's not what I do. When it comes to business structures and systems, when it comes to creative tax strategies and finances and operations, and when it comes to real estate investing and creative investing, I do it. So I teach you what I know. I've got receipts and proof to show that it works for me. It has worked for the countless people that we have helped and that we're still helping along the way. And we'll be more than happy to speak with you. So if you're interested in anything that we've talked about or just need some information on what direction to go, all you have to do is text. I don't know why I'm missing my T here. Text the word mentor to 678-276-8253. Screenshot that number.